Hi everyone, Neil Wilcoxon here. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my data storage solution. There's nothing scientific about this, but hopefully it'll give you some ideas if you're looking for a way to store a lot of data. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is how I started storing my data. Like many people, I just put it directly on my computer's hard drive, and that worked great. In this case, it was a Dell Inspiron 530. If you watch some of the old videos on my channel, you'll see that computer. And that had a 320 gigabyte hard drive. I did have a little bit of data, probably about 2 gigabytes, and I moved that over to the computer when I first got it on a 2 gigabyte flash drive or something like that. And this computer was pretty great. I didn't have anything I really needed to back up. It was just kind of working files that weren't that important. But once I did, there was a network attached storage device on my home network that I backed up to. That's great for a small amount of data, but eventually as I started getting into photography and video work and things got higher and higher resolution, that wasn't cutting it anymore. Now I didn't quite have enough money to go out and buy a fancy RAID array or anything like that. So what I did is went ahead and borrowed an external hard drive. I believe it was around 120 gigabytes, and I started storing stuff on there, and that stuff was all over the place and it was getting backed up to the network attached storage and stuff like that. So eventually I had to come up with a better solution. Now let's talk about solution number 2. This is the first time when I really started backing things up consistently, and I was confident that I had 2 copies of everything. So how did this work? I had a 1 terabyte external hard drive. It was the cheapest one I could find, happened to be from Seagate, and it ended up failing later, but that's not the point right now. Also, I went out and bought a 2 terabyte internal drive. That was just due to a sale going on, and I could basically get it for the same price as a 1 terabyte. So what did I do with that? I stored all of my files on a 1 terabyte partition of that 2 terabyte drive in my computer, partitioned out the rest of that drive for free working space for render files and stuff like that, and then that 1 terabyte partition got backed up to the external drive. Now let's go ahead and talk about solution number 3. This is actually the solution that brought me right up to this summer when I had to switch over to a laptop. Now around that time, I was going to build my own computer, which allowed a lot more flexibility, especially in terms of how many hard drives you can put directly in the computer. On my motherboard, I had 6 SATA ports. One was used for an optical drive, one was used for the boot SSD, and the rest I could use for hard drives. So I went ahead and brought over that 2 terabyte drive I mentioned from the previous setup. I also took the 1 terabyte drive out of its enclosure, and those were in the computer. The 1 terabyte drive started to get unreliable, so I went out and bought a 2 terabyte hard drive, put that in the computer, and those 2 terabyte drives could back up to each other, and I'd have a copy of everything. So from that point, I got more data, those drives got full, and I went out and bought 3 terabyte hard drives and mirrored those onto each other. Now that would move on and things would get full, and that would kind of coincide with the next setup. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Now we're going to talk about solution number 4. First, I'd like to explain the inspiration for this solution, and then I'll explain how exactly my setup works. So during my high school years, I worked at a church and we did video work there. And that generated a lot of files. We stored everything in ProRes 422 or ProRes 422 HQ, and those files got big, especially since they were hour-long recordings, and we needed a place to store them. We had a Drobo which had a couple of terabytes on it, and that was for storing working files, but all the archive files had to go somewhere, and as a result, those went onto bare hard drives. And how we read them was through a device that I'd like to call a hard drive toaster. I've got one here that's part of my setup, and basically what will happen is the hard drive will go in the top here, push the button, and connects over USB to the computer. That's great because you can read a drive without having to have any kind of enclosure. It's nice and quick. You can have drives in these yellow boxes on the shelf and pull one down and read it, or write things to it like we did. We had a storage area where we'd go and store those, and that was good to go. We had a lot of these as far as I'm aware. That wasn't particularly my job, but I was definitely aware of it, and that's where I got the inspiration. So let's talk about how my system works. I'll keep all my working files on my computer, and those will get backed up to an online service called CrashPlan. The internet's pretty fast here at the university, so it's not too bad. Now, once that starts to get full or I want to move files off, I've got an external drive. I've actually got it in the drawer right here. Let me pull that out. It's just a Seagate external 4 terabyte drive, and I'll move files over there. And since I only have one of those, I'll also occasionally back up to one of these drives. And now let's talk about where all my archive data lives. So this hard drive here in particular, I'll go ahead and take this out of the case. This is a 4 terabyte drive, which it says on their archive projects, if you can see that. And this is basically all of my work, video, otherwise for forever almost. And I've got one copy of this here, but in case this building should happen to be a total loss or something bad happens, there's another exact copy of this hard drive at my parents' house in California. So that gives me some confidence that I'm not going to be losing this data. That's also why there's a sticker on here that says read only, so I know not to write any new files to this drive in case I'm not thinking straight one day. So I'll go ahead and put that back in the case. Something that I thought I'd mention about these cases is I can never find the same ones. So if you really want all your cases to match, maybe just buy a bunch of them at once and have extras. You just see this case opens from the top. These cases open like a book. I actually like these better because they have these grooves in them to stack on top of each other. Also, opening it like this, you're just less likely to drop the hard drive, so that's good. So that's pretty much it for my setup. Let me know your ideas down in the comments. Of course, you can implement your own solution, maybe even make a video. Post a link to that down below. I'd like to remind you to rate this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon.